Hi everyone, thank you very much for stopping by and returning to the old world. Today we're talking about a big rumour that's hit the socials, certainly my socials today, and if it's true, both literally and figuratively, it's a bit of a game changer. So what am I going to cover? Obviously, the rumour itself. I'll talk about whether I think there's any possibility that it sounds potentially true or not, and if it is true, what this means for the game. So what are these rumours? Well, to put it simply, we're looking at the potential for version 1.5 of Warhammer The Old World being released this summer. We're told that any rules changes will be modest and they won't invalidate the current books. So not looking at huge changes, however, we could expect to see a buff to infantry, particularly infantry that's operating in larger blocks. So that suggests, as part of this information feed / rumour that's going around, that there's not going to be anything here for monstrous infantry. It's just the normal lads on foot. We're seeing some changes to the magic system to reduce the disparity between what are noted as hero level and lord level wizards. So making sure those 1 and 2 level wizards are not so miles inferior to their level 3 and 4 cousins. On the subject of magic, we're also looking at the potential nerf to vortices. Looking at characters, there's going to be a toning down of mounted lords. So those choppy chaos lords on dragons and potentially those super important Bretonnian lords on Royal Pegasus. We're also told that skirmish rules, thems are going to change, and there's also going to be something done to prevent or tone down the potential for Linehammer. So what do I think about the veracity before we go on to any of these rumours and what they might mean for the state of the game? So it's alleged that Games Workshop staff have been talking about changes to Warhammer The Old World for a little bit of time now, so people feel a bit more confident in talking about these rumours. Interestingly, we're talking about a release in the summer. Now, Cathay is supposedly due this summer, and my friendly local gaming store has actually recently been taking expressions of interest, not pre-orders, expressions of interest in people that might be interested in stuff from the new Cathay range. Now, they may know something more than we do, they may not know more than we do, but if they're taking these expressions of interest and they have merely shared a Warhammer community page in backing this up, it does suggest that there's going to be those releases sometime relatively soon. We also know that Horus Heresy is due to be released very soon. Again, that's all over the Warhammer community pages. So it would seem odd for a major release for Warhammer The Old World to follow very closely behind the release of a new edition of the Horus Heresy. Overall, this list of things to change does seem to chime with what a lot of people are asking for, particularly buffs to infantry and really dealing with some of the more problematic units in the game. Now, something so complete could be Games Workshop really paying attention to what's going on, really listening to the community, and this not being the Games Workshop of 10 years ago. It's very possible that they've done that, but it does also smack a little bit wish listy, so treat this with a sense of caution. Until something appears on Warhammer Community, rumours are merely that and must be taken with a massive grain of salt. But let's just pretend for a moment that these rumours are true. What would this mean for Warhammer The Old World? Well, I think we'd actually see quite a substantial change to the meta with a number of relatively modest tweaks. For a starting point, we'll get armies that look a little bit more like armies. Combined arms, potentially more of a thing, if ranked up blocks of infantry are going to be more helpful. I'm not sure how they'll do that. Maybe it's something like It is step up, maybe it's fighting extra ranks, something that means you don't have to go long and thin, so in proper block, something that looks like an infantry unit rather than something strung massively across the field in one somewhat ridiculous looking line. Bretonnians, well, they've been top of the charts pretty consistently for a long time now, and it doesn't really matter whether you're taking exiles, whether you're taking Grand Army composition, because you got access to a very choppy hero or lord type character on a flying mount, riding around with his mates on Pegasi. The toning down of these super powerful characters will really bring, I think, Bretonnians back into the pack. It'll make them a lot more beatable. It'll make them really a lot more interesting to play against and with, I think, because you're not going to be able to take that RAF list that's been mopping up at so many events. Now, I know a lot of people are saying actually the RAF list isn't all that, and you've got a few top players running a list. It is yes, quite powerful, but Peg Knights, people are saying, are overrated because it's just ablative armour for your Lord, and the Lord's the problem. So if these rumours are true, we're going to see that toned down, and we'll see who's right when it comes to that. Wizard changes, I think, are interesting. If level 1, 2, 3, 4 wizards all become a little bit closer together, yes, we'd probably have to expect to see some points changes to reflect either the strengthening of the lower level wizards or the reduction in power of the higher level wizards. But it does open the door for some of the armies of infamy to get a bit more play, I think. Things like the Army of Null, for example, that can only get level 1 and 2 wizards. That's a massive disadvantage, I think, in anything resembling a competitive game. Make those level 2s a bit more of an even playing field with their more powerful cousins, however, and suddenly maybe, just maybe, you're not at such a disadvantage, and those sort of army lists start to look a little bit more feasible. Sticky on that Empire theme, of course, the Imperial Knight Army of Infamy, with the exception of one particular Knight chapter, doesn't have access to wizards at all. That really does hurt. So maybe if everything's being toned down, that will hurt just that little bit less. The final question to ask around all of this is, if there is going to be this release, what will it look like? Are we going to see a book? Now, that seems really unlikely for the reasons that I've discussed when talking about the veracity of this particular rumour. With all the other releases going on over the summer, the release of a new book, particularly when we're only a year and a half into Warhammer The Old World, that seems like a bit of an odd one to me. But if we look, yes, there have been 0.5 sort of edition styles before with Warhammer 40,000 and have a couple of very short-lived editions. I think 7th edition was only around for a very short period of time. What I'm leaning towards expecting to see, again, if heavily caveated, if this is true, would be a big balanced data sheet type release. So a freebie that will just go through, alter a bunch of points, alter some of the key rules, and not invalidate literally everything. Same way that Warhammer 40,000 periodically gets these really large scale updates, although thankfully not at the same pace that Warhammer 40k changes, because that seems to change with alarming regularity. So is this true? I don't know. I would like it to be true, because I think it could lift the game just to create a bit better balance, and that's going to be a good thing, and also make armies look a bit more like armies, making infantry useful. There's so many units in the game, purely because infantry are second rate to cavalry and monsters, that you never really see played, and if they do, they're very much substandard and they're not going to achieve as much as you'd like them to. So, would love this to be true. Let's watch this space, see what happens. Potentially some excitement here for some changes to the game to just make it more fun. What do you think about this particular rumour? Have you heard any more detail on your travels? Do let me know down in the comments below. And as always, do consider a like and subscribe if you've enjoyed the video. All that remains for me to say is thank you very much for listening. I am Return to the Old World, Have a great day.